We live?
We're live on Facebook. Just takes a couple of seconds to buffer, but I think we are live right now because it says we're live on the Zoom. But
Okay.
how you doing, Wally?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm doing good. Feeling healthy. Yeah, grateful. 2020 has been an interesting year. But
Amazing.
yeah, we made it.
It is. It is. I'm just gonna post this across to another page. And while I'm doing that, Wally, since the last time we talked, we've been in a lockdown. We've come out of a lockdown. We're back in another lockdown as of tomorrow night. How are things? How have things been going for you?
Ah, um, so at the beginning of lockdown, when the news was announced that everyone kind of had to start working from home, I think at Tally we had to take a decision as to, whether we should look at it half glass full or half glass empty. Um, and essentially looking at the half glass full aspect of it, it's, what can we do to take advantage of this period? Um, and, it's a bit of a sad environment just because of what's happening, but just looking around, whilst we're working from home, we kind of have a bit more time on our hands because we don't have to travel to work. Also, it gives us the opportunity to, do more home stuff or learn about new things that we've always wanted to learn about, do like a new activity at home. So yeah, I think that's what I was kind of doing. I've been going for a lot of walks through lockdown. I've been like exploring and all that type of stuff, and I'm trying to get back into photography. So really just trying to take advantage of it, really.
So can you just explain to people a little bit about your background and what you do, and then kind of how I know we talked to Laura a couple of weeks ago, but how Tally Talks with you has progressed since the time you started it.
Yeah, 100%. So my name's Walé, and background-wise, I grew up in South London, and then I went to university in Wales, and I came back to London, which is a complete different world, because Wales is more like countryside and stuff. And I actually work in the legal industry. So I'm a corporate trainee lawyer at the moment, and I'm quite, big on mental health, and I work with the team at Tally. The important thing to flag with Tally is we come from the peer-to-peer aspect, because we are all aware that there are professionals out there that can help with mental health related challenges and mental health related issues. Or just speaking about mental health, but what we realize is that it's quite inaccessible. And it's not necessarily the fault of the professionals. It's just the way the system's set up. But mental health should be, the same as talking about your physical health, the way you talk about it with a friend. And it should just be an open conversation. And you shouldn't necessarily have to be, quote unquote, an expert to talk about your own mental health and just share your emotions with other people, your feelings with other people. And that's the kind of nail we've been trying to hit on the head, just to make that language more common and to teach people the, right language to have those conversations. And yeah, that's my kind of backgroundish. And to speak more about Tally, so Tally kind of began last year, and I think we there was a launch event in February, right before the kind of lockdown restrictions kicked in, and it was obviously a physical launch event. We invited people to an office in West End, and it was just about connecting strangers to one another. Tally runs an anonymous platform, so everyone uses nicknames and everyone's really welcoming. And then lockdown happened, and we thought to ourselves, okay, how do we best help people from here if we can't do it physically? So we started doing this thing called Tally Talks virtually. And Tally Talks for background is an anonymous and interactive group conversation, which enables people to discuss mental health related topics. Yeah, that's Tally, and it's been going really well so far. Got a Forbes feature, got a few other achievements, did a successful crowdfunding campaign where we raised, I think about we're meant to raise 15K, but we raised more than that. So yeah, it's been going very well, and we're mainly volunteer led actually. So all good.
We both, me and Melissa, love what you guys are doing because it's very much heart aligned with what we do, which is, you know, Melissa always says, you know, you are the own expert in your experiences, and in being able to create these kind of safe conversations and safe spaces for people to be able to talk to, which, as you know, takes a little bit of time, you know, for people to kind of talk about their vulnerability, talk about things that have happened to them, and then to have other people actually be brave enough to say, you know, that happened to me too. And then the beautiful thing, and I'm sure you've seen it, and I know I've experienced it with one of your talks too, is that people start to connect, and the trust starts to be built. And then we can start looking forward to, how do we actually promote change within ourselves? Because I love what you say, you know, about mental well-being is just not, you know, mental well-being and physical well-being. Again, I think, you know, we are on the shift of it just being a holistic approach to our bodies and our minds and our spirits. It's all encompassing, it's all in one. And the stigma around the words mental health is just, you know, it's being reduced, but it's still, especially for my experience for men. And that brings us into, you know, what Movember was set up for, you know, and I think it was around 2004, Movember was set up originally to kind of bring awareness to men's prostate testicular cancer. And then the kind of mental health thing was attached to it too, because, you know, like I don't go to the doctor, you know, I don't know how to check my body parts. I'm always like, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. And I love what Movember brings around because, you know, guys who I played sports with, real tough men, you know, are actually, you know, they're shaving off their beards. I should have shaved mine off. They're shaving off their beards and they're saying, let's get in this together and let's talk. Maybe you and I should go and like do a quick shave.
It took me too long to get to this level. I just
Yeah.
can't. It took me a very long time. This took like the whole of lockdown to get to
Yeah.
this stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, but
It
maybe.
just, you know, it hurts my skin. My skin's really sensitive. So, you know, that's my excuse, but, I know we're all in this together. And I think just being able to talk about it and laugh about it is funny and endearing. It's quite nice that, again, men are talking about things that they wouldn't normally talk about because we're in this month. And this month is particularly tough again because of, you know, we're heading into another lockdown. And while we were talking a little bit before this and just looking at the new statistics on the suicide rates around men and them being, you know, the highest category. And I think it's nearly 17 per 100,000 in the UK. Specifically, men aged as 45 to 49 are taking their lives at an unprecedented rate. And I think that, you know, again, Movember brings about the ability for be able to discuss it and create awareness to it. But again, what you guys are doing at what we're doing here at Retribe is being able to create a space for people to actually have some coping mechanisms, you know, with these feelings. But I'm really interested to know, you know, you grew up in South London. And what kind of environment did you grow up in? What did you learn about what it was like to be a real man?
Um, that's a really good question. Um, it takes a lot to dig into it, but essentially, I think even just taking it out of the environment you grew up in for a second, just the way the world and the media is set up, just the things you see, the adverts you see on TV, the movies you watch, whether it be superhero movies or anything like that. A lot of the time, a man is described in one certain light, which is obviously being a provider or being the strong one, and you never really see a quote unquote man being, you know, in the weaker position, or if they are in the weaker position, it's kind of looked down upon. So that's just universally most of the time. And then obviously growing up in the environment that I grew up in, because of what we see on TV and stuff, we learn from that. So with that being said, we tend to, you know, any emotions that we see as being vulnerable, even if it's crying or even if it's just sharing experiences that are vulnerable, or even sharing emotions like fear or different things like that, you tend to keep that to yourself. And that means, and the way the effect that that has had is that growing up now, we, especially men, don't know how to have that conversation with each other. We don't understand that language to have that conversation with each other. And that's where the big problem lies, because you will see that men are, quite comfortable with, well, not quite comfortable, but they're more comfortable with being vulnerable with, women. But we hang out with our male friends all the time. Like you said, we play sports together, we go to the gym together, but we're just not able to cross that barrier into, being or sharing experiences that may be seen as vulnerable together. And the really bad thing about, mental health is that it's almost inside your head. It's not something that you can physically see. So if your friend sees you with a really big scab or a really big injury, they say, are you okay? What's wrong? Have you come to the hospital? But no one can see the scab inside of you. And because you've been taught not to kind of share or not to kind of show that quote unquote weakness, you kind of suffer alone. And no, it's not that the guys around you don't care. It's not that the people around you don't care. It's that they can't see it. So in order for us to overcome that barrier, we have to make it a bit more normal to speak about mental health. And of course, like you mentioned earlier, the mental health stigma is a big thing. And in order for us to battle that, we can't just necessarily say, okay, everyone has to speak about mental health openly and attach their mental health issues to their face and to their name, because that's a very, very big step. But the first step is actually having these conversations, and even if it's starting off by having these conversations in private with people you trust, or just having it on an anonymous platform like Tally or Retribe. That would be the first step, and just being used to the language to use to have that conversation, and then we can actually maybe move to the next step of being able to say, oh yeah, mental health conversations are a normal thing, and it doesn't matter if it's attached to your name. We don't judge you by it. Yeah.
I'm wondering about this next question, and it's something that's just brought about what you said, was when you talk about language, the language that we know how to express ourselves, and the language that we're taught when we're younger. And I'm wondering, has it ever hindered you to not have the language present for you to be able to tell somebody that you're in pain or that you need help or something? Like, think about that when you were maybe growing up, when maybe you didn't have that kind of language that you have now, and how perhaps it hindered you or kind of, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. It's definitely a big part of it, because especially when you don't know exactly what's wrong with you. So I recently just learned, what anxiety was. I knew about anxiety, but defining anxiety, a lot of people define it in different ways. And I've just recently come to terms with, what that exactly is. So sometimes it's hard to actually even be able to identify what you're going through, whether it be depression or anxiety, or just, simple worry or stress. And then being able to have that language to kind of, yeah, describe, this is what I'm going through. And I guess to make it a bit more personal to me, I've had conversations with like my guy friends and stuff, and I almost don't know, like, I am sharing, but I almost can't find the actual, words to really, really communicate um, what it is. And they don't have the tools either. They don't have the experience either to dig in. Because in the world we live in, when you ask someone if they're all right, normally the first thing automatically is, oh yeah, not bad. But you tend to have to kind of dig in with stage one and stage two. Are you sure you're all right? How are you feeling lately? Different, questions like that would bring out more of how they're feeling. And a lot of us don't necessarily have the tools to even do that, to take those steps in order to really bring out how someone's really feeling. So I think that's where the language becomes a barrier.
I agree completely. And also, what you were talking about is like when men tend to hang out, it's either in the gym or in a sporting environment. And that obviously sheds light on the definite difference between the male body and the female body, is that the male body is physically stronger. So we're
Yeah.
using the sporting world, we're using the gym, we're getting physically stronger. And that's like our identity. So I can do this and this and this. And then if you have a problem with your buddy in the gym and you say, oh, my legs are a little bit sore, and they're like, oh, Walé, are you stretching your hamstrings? Or, are you working on
Mm.
your core? Or, so they have language to be able to deal with the physicality of our, and advice and experience. But when it comes to I'm feeling sad today. You know, I'm crying a lot. My eyes are tearing up. The backs of my eyes are tearing up. Your buddies are going to be like, dude, like, what are you talking about? Man up. I don't know about that. And I think
Yeah,
that that's what you really, you highlighted really well, is we just don't have the language to be able to go, what, like, I know what my hamstrings are bad, but what's this funny feeling in here? You know,
yeah,
and like you're saying, we're just kind of learning about words like, you know, what's the difference between stress and what's the difference between anxiety, and how does fear manifest itself in my body?
yeah.
And I think, and it's just, again, it's just kind of being able to learn languages and be guided through being able to kind of help people through these things. And the other thing that I wanted to go on about, to point out to you, was about not having this simple language of being able to ask for help. You know, isn't it funny that we're taught that you don't have to ask for help, you can solve your own problems? You know, and
100%.
especially in your corporate world, does that manifest itself a lot, where people just try to figure out all their own problems themselves?
Yeah, yeah. I think there are the corporate world's a bit different as well because there are different. I guess if you feel like you're held to a high standard, or if you feel like you're normally a high achiever, you always feel like, okay, I should know this. But there's an entry point for everything, so everyone starts at the entry point and then they grow and they become hopefully an expert in that area. But it's okay to admit, I don't know this. I shouldn't know this because I'm new to this. Or even if you've been there a while, we're human at the end of the day. We're not robots, and we don't automatically just keep information, or a lot of information. So yeah, there is that pressure there, for a lot of people feeling like they're kind of scared to ask for help. But then going back to the mental health aspect of it, it's okay not to necessarily have that language. But I think the first step is being able to acknowledge that there's something wrong, or that something's not quite right. Because a lot of the time you have the language of, oh yeah, I'm okay, yeah, I'm doing okay, not bad, I'm all right. But being able to initially acknowledge that something's not right, but I don't want to speak about it right now. I first want to navigate it myself, and then I could speak about it later. I could learn that language later on how to express it. But I know I just don't feel 100% today, or I don't feel myself today, or I didn't take that event that happened very, very well. So it's being able to kind of acknowledge first, and then you can identify, what's wrong, and then you can learn the language, and then you can, share, and those will be the kind of steps for me.
Yeah, and I think also being able to create an environment, whether it's the corporate environment or the home environment or the changing room environment, is to, like, to recognize something isn't right, and then being able to ask somebody, what does this mean? Because I know with me, like, when I stopped playing, the sport that I loved, I was like 28 years old, and sport was my life. It was my identity. I was known as an athlete, and just an average one. I wasn't superstar or anything like that, but I was just always playing sports. And then when that was taken away from me and I was put inside of a corporate environment, that was quite limelight and glamorous and stuff, I had no identity there. And what I did was I tried to mold myself around other people, and I mimicked people. But I knew in something was inside of me. I felt like imposter syndrome, or I felt like a fraud.
Mm,
And I think I wish back then that that I knew that there was someone I could talk to about, like, I just don't feel like I belong here.
yeah,
And being able to have that language, like, I don't feel like I belong here, because then people could kind of work me around into kind of helping me and support me through that. But my
yeah,
solution then was to use substances and alcohol. And that, finally enough, that worked for me until, for 15 years. But again, always knowing that something didn't feel right.
yeah,
And then when I took a drink, it took that kind of pain or that fear away. And I know this. I was like 45 years old, and my body was shutting down. My liver was packing up, my kidneys were failing. I had acute pancreatitis. I'd lost the sight temporarily in my left eye. I was probably about 20 or 30 pounds lighter than I am now, and I was dying of malnutrition and alcohol poisoning.
mm,
But it was at that age of 45 that I was so beaten that I could say help me to somebody. And I think this is a big thing, is the male ego can be one of our strengths, but it can be one of our biggest weaknesses, is that we just don't have this ability to recognize that we need to ask for help, and to recognize in our body these uncomfortablenesses, these fears, these anxieties. And that's what I love, what guys like you and I can do, is to be able to create spaces for men to say, hey, what, before you started to drink, what was it like? And or before you started to feel anxious, what was it like? Because then we can start looking at prevention, so people don't have to go down as deep as I went. And we can actually, help people before they get to the point of almost dying. So what are your plans for this coming month? I know you've kind of told me a little bit, but I know you have got a heart out at 11:30 here today. So I'd like to kind of get people thinking about Movember, and thinking about what can we do in this month to best support one another.
Yeah, 100%. I just wanted to touch as well, just because you raised about being able to speak to someone at work. Being able to speak to someone at work when you feel like you don't necessarily belong. It's very important for corporations to build that culture where you're able to find someone similar to you, who may have felt like they didn't belong, because it's all great if there's a counselor around who kind of tells you you do belong, or if there's a supervisor that tells you do belong. But it's even better to be able to find someone who felt that they didn't belong, and they're still there and they're thriving there. And it turns out they did belong, and it was just the way they viewed things. So yeah, just want to touch on that.
Yeah. I'll just kind of got on that. Isn't it funny that when you meet people who've been through a similar experience, you kind of tend to build that trust to know, hey, I'm not alone here, and I think that's extreme. I'm so glad that you pointed that out, is that, if you have been through something, it's really beneficial to other people and yourself to be able to share that experience. And that's what I really love about your platform, and that in the initial stages, it's anonymous, and you can come and you can just share your experience, and people can kind of go, oh, wow, I've been through that too. Then you're kind of in your little tribe, and then you're more likely to create accountability to then do stuff about it. So yeah, thank you for pointing that out.
That's cool. On to Movember. So as you know, Movember is a very, very big and amazing charity. I found out about Movember, I think, way back in university. But Movember covers different things, from cancer to men's mental health, and we're focusing on the mental health aspect, of course. And we are going to be hosting a Talley Talk in November. I was going to say in November. In November, it's going to be on November 18th, at around 6 p.m. And we'll be kind of announcing on our Instagram, which is at tally.app. And essentially, the whole reason for the Tally Talk is to be able to connect older men, older generations to younger generations. So let's say men between the age of 18 to 25, and connecting them to men between the ages of 30, 35 to 40, and maybe even above. And it's being able to speak about how we can improve our language to be able to have such conversations like we're having now, and how to be able to express ourselves, and how to be able to make it normal for men to have these conversations. And I think it goes down to our childhood and the way we're raised. And unfortunately, it takes quite a while for men to be able to come on their own terms and say, I can talk about this and I do need to express this. But we need to be able to start teaching that to the younger generation. And we're running a challenge called the When I Cried Challenge, which we'd be asking people to do a short video or post about the last time they cried and why they cried, and they'd be able to nominate another male friend or male follower, and they'd be in for a chance to win some gift vouchers. So yeah, it's gonna be on November 18th.
Yeah, I love the fact, like, I'm 49. I hope I can I come in at one of those age
100%,
brackets.
yeah,
Um,
100%.
yeah, as soon as you were like something to 40, and I was like, what about 49? I feel old all of a sudden.
100%.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing, is people being able to share their experiences, because you know when people started using language with me, like sacred masculine, sacred feminine. And I was like, what's that? And they're talking about energy. And I was like, kind of all woofy woofy about it. And people started talking about spirituality, and people started talking about yoga and meditations. And I was kind of really like, I disregarded it, because I was taught when I was younger that this is just all mumbo jumbo, tree hugging stuff.
Yeah.
And I've learned, through experience that, we're all made up of energy, and whatever, like it's kind of like non-debatable. There's energy all around us. And for, tens of thousands of years, people have been talking about different types of energy, a masculine energy and a feminine energy. And, for millennia, people have been talking about this. So there must be something to it. They can talk. And the easiest way someone put it to me was the yin and the yang, right? The dark and the light, and they kind of pull off of each other. And I think that, again, being able to create spaces for men to be able to talk about this and to be able to ask questions and see how people becoming more aware of these energies and these connections and these communities, the language becomes a little bit more acceptable to the younger generation, who think, again, the way I thought about it when I was a youngster. So I think that that's an amazing thing, that we're getting like intergenerational people to be able to kind of guide one another. And also, I learned so much from guys like you. You teach me so much in your energy and in your passion and the things that you learn. And that, like, I know I'm wearing glasses, but we all, wherever we come from, whatever color body we're in, whatever economic situation, political situation we grew up in, we all have a perception of the world. And I think that the more perceptions that come together without judgment, if we can come into, in an anonymous platform or whatever, but if we can carry these into without judgment, then we can learn so much from each other. And and that's why I'm so grateful that, that you guys have come across our paths over the last few. Lockdown has sucked, but I'm also so grateful from the connections that we've made, the community that we've built. It's been amazing, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. There's been some good advantages. Yeah, and I think you lot are doing great things as well. And I think, yeah, these, like I said, these conversations are quite important. And I like the what's on the elephant and castle stuff. And it's, I guess, to an extent as well, it's more just about being aware and gaining some knowledge. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to take everything on or you have to agree with it. Yoga doesn't work for everyone. But it's just about knowing what is out there to help express yourself or to help kind of calm yourself, heal through whatever you're going through.
Yeah, there's no right, there's no wrong. We're all experts in our own journey, and let's just support each other while we go through it. And I'm just going to end this one. When was the last time you cried?
I think earlier this year. I think I want to say February. Yeah, February.
February?
Yeah.
You going to say why?
I'm still navigating it myself, but I think it had to do with just. I think it has to do with like the place I'm at the moment, because it's a different. I think it's a different environment that I'm used to. I think it's. I think it's. I think it relates to navigating change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it a cry out of fear, sadness, or happiness?
Oh no, it was like it was no, it was definitely more sadness. I think it was
Was it?
definitely more sadness. Yeah, I think it had to do with like navigating a lot of change, and I guess entering new spaces. Yeah, so yeah, it definitely wasn't a joyful one, but I was great. I was grateful for it, because there have been times as well where I haven't been able to cry. And I just feel like I got so much stored up energy, but I just can't cry and stuff. And it just came like randomly, and it was like uncontrolled, and it was wild. It was wild.
Isn't it amazing that we're designed to cry? We have tear ducts to cry, and I think that, again, we can support each other, learn from it. Just to let you know, I cry all the time. They're mainly like just tears of joy and gratitude, and it's something that when I'm in a room with people who we're talking in the same language, or not, maybe not in the same, but we're trying to learn each other's language, and I feel it's like the universe, my eyes are just, they're expressing an emotion of gratitude. For me, they just happen to water a lot. And I'm okay with that. I'm all right with that. And if I cry, my glasses make my teardrops look huge. So whatever. Wale, thank you so much for joining us at the What's on an Elephant and Castle Facebook page. If you could just ping me, I know it's at tally.app.
Yeah.
But if you want to ping me any other details, I'll put them on the What's on at Elephant Castle Facebook page if anyone wants to get in touch with you. So thank you so much. I'm looking forward to collaborating with you over Movember. Stay well and safe. And thanks everyone at the What's on an Elephant and Castle Facebook page for joining us. Don't forget, you can join us on Thursday at 11 a.m. for one of our gathering workshops. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.